Hello there, everybody. I'm Sabah92 Nightmare, and I'm going to apologize if I was. Well, let's be fair. I was insanely frustrated last episode, specifically near the ending bits, because, as a couple comments did point out, it legitimately felt like it was a regression of Takumi's character. And I don't make it a secret that I don't like Seiretan, but there was one comment that kind of did help me kind of clear my head a little bit, because it got to this point where I started to... I already made a mention that Seiretan was a very negative influence on Takumi's life, but looking at it a bit better, Seiretan is also a representation of, as if Takumi literally is talking to himself, which, to be fair, he kind of is. But through it seems like a more self-deprecative lens, with looking back at the dialogue that she was saying. If you look at it through the frame of mind that this is Takumi saying this, he's saying this about himself, like pure self-deprecation. That doesn't change that it felt like all of the positive steps that Takumi had been taking for his character was all just thrown away. It hurts. It really hurts seeing him fall back on these negative habits and just give up on his sister. That haunting image of the pool of blood with her just standing there. Christ. Also, you gotta give credit to the VA work. Like, goddamn, the VA is utterly fantastic, especially Takumi's. And then there's Darth Spider, which was tonal whiplash, which is apparently a thing in Steins Gate. And sometimes I seem to forget that, you know, same developers. I sometimes forget that. Anyway, unfortunately, Takumi did not grasp the sword. And now we're moving into Chapter 7, titled Psychopath. Despite midnight quickly approaching, the ticket gates of the subway's Hanzaman line were still filled to the brim with people. The earthquake had violently disrupted the public transportation schedules, and no one was even attempting to hide their frustration as they passed through the ticket gates. Employing a sidelong glance, Bon Yasuji inspected the monitor resting in the station attendant booth. Okay, so we're in Bon's perspective here. Okay, goody. The station staff had received a call yesterday during their morning operations. The caller had reported that a high school girl wielding a gigantic bladed weapon was going on a rampage in the area. The police had been dispatched in response to this, but upon arriving at the scene, they found no trace of the girl, nor the man who had supposedly been attacked. Okay, so now they just reported Senna's attack. Okay. Also, somebody was kind enough to go out there and, actually, you know what? I need to properly credit you for, translating what the crowd was chanting throughout the entire, throughout that entire very drawn out and utterly haunting scene. Thanks to you, Emiya Yukido. Thank you very much. Thank you for clarifying that they were indeed chanting, "Whose eyes are those eyes?" You're right. It's obvious. But thank you exceptionally much for actually, for telling me that, because I really would not have gotten that. I really would not have gotten that. So thank you very much for, clarifying that for me. Bon, who had happened to overhear the story earlier today, was very interested in the appearance of the male victim. The fact that there had been several similar incidents had also caught his attention. This is why Bon was making an appearance here at such an hour. According to his sources, the incident had been captured in full on one of the surveillance cameras. When Bon asked the station attendant to show him the video, they willingly agreed, but warned the detective that the video was a little creepy. Duly noting this, Bon elected to have them show him the video. The video was full of static. Maybe it's from the earthquake. Bon thought to himself. There had been various reports about the earthquakes causing citizens to lose hard disk data, leaving Bon to wonder whether it was related. It would be difficult to identify anyone in the recording, as they were just barely visible. The recording featured a single man. He was standing by the wall in the far right-hand corner of the screen. The wall was located slightly far from the ticket gates, meaning passengers would not travel past it very often, as they were changing trains. Incidentally, a few other passengers had just crossed in front of the camera. The man's appearance was hard to make out due to the fierce static, but he was fairly short and thin, and he was carrying a large rucksack. What exactly was he doing? What exactly he was doing, Bon could not say. After about an hour or so had passed in the video, a small change occurred. A few people commuting to work were walking in the direction of the man, and then they swiftly stopped. To Bon, it looked as if they had been drawn to the man with the rucksack. What was truly strange, however, was that they did not even speak to him. They simply stood there in a daze. The people who had stopped did not seem to be acquaintances of the man. They were of different ages, sexes, statures. There was absolutely nothing they all shared. What in blazes is going on? Staring at the monitor, Bon tilted his head to the side, and as he did so, a lone girl entered the frame. She had long hair, and she was wearing a uniform from Sume Academy. The girl headed straight for the man with the rucksack, in a manner that could only be described as exuding nothing but pure, unadulterated confidence. Her movements were entirely unlike those who had stopped before. Instead of halting, the girl pushed aside the people gathered there and seized the man by his collar. For a short period of time, the two of them argued about something. Rather than an argument, however, it was far closer to the girl simply screaming at the man without giving him room for air. Or at least that was how it appeared. A few of the people who had stopped seemed to return to their senses and promptly left the scene. Eventually, the girl thrust the man away from her. The girl took a step back from the man who had fallen on his rear, then assumed a strange pose. She lowered her hips and brought both fists next to her ears. The girl looked as if she was holding something, but there was nothing in her hands. The funny thing is, I was about to ask about that. I was wondering, how is Bond seeing this? Since, if he saw a sword, then he suddenly had that sort of potential. But no, he's seeing it as a normal person. As in, this girl is not really holding anything. According to the report, the girl had been wielding a large blade, but where on earth could she be hiding such a thing? The answer to that soon became apparent. Suddenly, the camera shook. It was not static. The rustling hair and clothes of the passerby made it clear. The surveillance camera itself was shaking. Bond gawked at the screen. He had no idea where she had retreated from, but the next thing he knew, the girl was holding a gigantic sword in her hand, one that was longer than she was tall. Oh, never mind. I'm stupid. Bond asked for the tape to be rewound just so he could confirm what he had seen. But no matter what angle he examined it from, the sword appeared to have been conjured out of thin air. The girl had not moved a single muscle. She had remained in her hunched position the entire time. This much was undeniable. The people in the video went into a panic when faced with the sudden appearance of the sword, but the girl did not seem to care about the people around her. The man with the rucksack, however, was very clearly terrified. He tried desperately to scramble to his feet and run away. But the girl would not allow that. With incredibly agile movement, she pursued the fleeing man and swung her gigantic sword as if it was light as a feather. In a manner akin to a violent windstorm, the sword tore the man's rucksack to pieces. The impact was so strong the man immediately collapsed to the ground. Despite this, he appeared uninjured. In fact, when the police officers had arrived on the scene immediately after receiving the call, they had not found even a single trace of blood. Then, as if the girl had heard Bon's murmuring, something that should have been impossible considering it was a recording, she suddenly turned toward the camera. The screen ever so slightly distorted.
Oh.
And the girl's figure disappeared in an instant. As if she had never been there to begin with. The man's shredded rucksack had been left behind, and the remnants of it were proof that the girl had been there. It was hard to tell because of the static, but it was clear that the girl had disappeared from the screen in less than a second. Bon rewound the tape again. There was nothing that seemed unnatural about the time displayed in the lower right corner of the screen. In other words, the footage had not been edited. But if that were true, how could Bon explain the girl and the sword? Bon, feeling as though he had seen a ghost, could do nothing but more than remain completely and utterly puzzled. Oh, I'll be damned. Okay, whose perspective are we in now? A world of complete and utter white. And I was lying right in the center of it all. It felt as if I were floating, but I didn't know whether or not I actually was. I couldn't figure out what direction I was facing. Not up, nor down, not left, nor right. The silence was deafening. It felt as if there were hundreds of insects buzzing around in my head at once. If someone were to tell me that this was the afterlife, I couldn't see myself contesting it. That was how. Monotonous, simplistic, tranquil, orderly, immaculate, empty, and peaceful the world was. Perhaps this was what the mind of Buddha was like upon reaching enlightenment. It was so incredibly different from my own mind. I wanted to stay here forever. The irritation that came with reality, the loneliness, the pain, the suffering, I didn't want to face any of it anymore. As my thoughts began to cascade, I heard a noise burst into the white world that had previously been silent. The sound of a door being opened, and the sound of someone's footsteps, getting closer and closer.
Oni, 来たよ。
What?
一緒、一緒。
Huh?
お兄、お兄、今日ね、ナナね、いいもの持ってきたんだよ。
Okay, so we're in Takumi's perspective?
はい、これ、プレゼント。手編みの帽子なんだよ。すごいでしょ、すごいでしょ。もう冬だしね。ナナね、帽子好きだから編んだの。
You know, if this is going to be a guilt trip to make Takumi feel legit guilty for abandoning his sister, I think you're doing a good job. Make him feel guilt.
お兄、無視しないでよ。ああ、ご飯残してるじゃん。せっかくのカレーなのに。ちゃんと食べないとダメなんだよ。ねえねえ、病院のご飯って美味しくないって本当？
Hospital food.
でも食べないとダメ。
Whoa, wait, what?
起きろ、お兄、食べずに寝たら夜になってお腹空いちゃうんだから。
Someone's hand made its way under my back and forcibly shook my body awake. That was when I first realized that my eyes had been closed. Huh? When I opened my eyes, a little girl was standing there. It was Nanami, my little sister. But she was awfully little. It was Nanami from a long time ago. But how long ago? I wondered. She must have been at least in elementary school.
はい、あーして。
The younger Nanami scooped up some curry with a plastic spoon, then offered it to me. And I slapped the hand holding the spoon. Even after all this time, I still didn't know what had been going through my head. But in that moment, I'd knocked away the tray of curry and rice with my hand and sent it crashing to the floor.
お兄、お行儀悪いんだ。お母さんに言いつけてやるぞ。
Nanami crouched down to the floor and picked up the tray I'd cast aside. She then retrieved a washcloth from the sink in the corner of the room and began cleaning up the mess I'd made.
ほんと、世話が焼けるな。
And you're the world's most patient little sister.
ナナがいないと何にもできないんだから。
That's enough. I covered my face with my hands, then slowly closed my eyes.
ごめんね。あなたを守ってあげられなくて。
Couldn't protect me. I slowly opened my eyes and saw a white ceiling. It was so bright it nearly blinded me. I blinked my eyes a few times. I tried to move my fingertips. I raised my hand in front of my face. The palm of my hand created a shadow. At last, I was free from the blinding glare. I had been dreaming about Nanami. Ever since I could remember, she had an especially strong will. After the bus accident back in elementary school, I'd stopped talking to anyone and everyone. But even so, that part of Nanami only became stronger and stronger. Unlike my parents, who were simply overprotective and nothing else, she'd taken care of me all while remaining strict and firm. But that dream... Had I ever been hospitalized before? I had gone in for checkups, sure, but... Well, it was just a dream, so there was no real reason to take it, nor the contradiction seriously. There are these humongous laps in your memory. I'm starting to be convinced that there is something serious... Well, I mean, I've already said that there's something seriously wrong with him, but there's got to be a reason why he's lacking these memories. Was it like him subconsciously blocking these things out? For, like, self-defense? I was lying on a bed. It was a white bed with the pipe frame. The sheets were white, the pillows were white, the linoleum floor was white, the wallpaper was white, the fluorescent lights on the ceiling were white, the curtains covering the windows were white, the small shelf next to the bed was white, the ceramic paper pitcher was white, the paper cups were white. I was starting to get fed up with all the white. Mustering up my resolve, I attempted to sit up. For a split second, I felt a numbing pain jolt through the area around my waist, but it went away just as suddenly as it appeared. The waist, huh? The room was fairly large, at least twice the size of my base, but what really bothered me was how incredibly dreary it was. Maybe it was a hospital room? There's a pair of green slippers lined right up beneath the bed. I was relieved to find a color other than white. Hey, they're green! My body was moving just fine, and it didn't seem like I was dead either. I was thirsty. I wanted a cola. An ice-cold carbonated cola. But there was no way I'd be able to find something like that in this pure white room. So I was forced to pour water directly from the pitcher into my mouth. It was a bit lukewarm, but it was enough to satisfy my thirst. Oh shit, you! Upon finishing the water, I took a breath. The door then opened and a nurse wearing white scrubs came into the room. But that was enough for me to confirm that I wasn't a hospital after all. Upon seeing me, her eyes grew slightly wide. She must have thought I would still be asleep.
Ara.
Ara?
西条さん、目が覚めたんですね。
Facing me, she gave me a gentle smile, the mark of a true nurse. But something told me I'd seen this person before. Oh, I remembered her now. She was the grill who'd been at the hospital when I'd gone to see Dr. Takashina a while back. Of course, she used grill. What had she said her name was? I couldn't remember, so I stole a glance at the name tag on her chest. Hazuki was written on it. Right, Hazuki-san.
お体の調子はどうですか?
Hazuki-san held out a thermometer to me so naturally, I couldn't help but take it.
体温を測ってくださいね.
With how nicely she'd asked me, I had no choice but to comply. My head was overrun with question marks, but I put the thermometer inside my armpit nonetheless. Immediately after I did so, a memory burst to life inside my head. I remembered what happened. Back then, I had given up on saving Nanami. I had grabbed onto Shogun's wheelchair, but there had been no response. It had collapsed in a heap, and when I looked again, all I'd been holding was Darth Spider's helmet. Count Darth Spider, the very embodiment of evil in Spark Wars. His black-clad appearance was famous even in Japan. Sorry. But I would have never thought that Shogun would cosplay as him, so my anger had been overridden by raw confusion. After that, I'd stood up and looked at the wheelchair, but there'd been no one in it. Only a black hood draped over the back of it. That was another part of Darth Spider's costume. I then examined my surroundings one more time, but there'd been no one there. I'd been the only one on that pitch-black rooftop. Suddenly, the press then came flooding in all at once. They had surrounded me with lights, cameras, and microphones. I'd had no room to breathe. There had been more than 10 of them in total. I'd been so overwhelmed by it all, my terror simply grew and grew. I wanted to run away, but I couldn't move a muscle. I'd been a total mess.
西尾君帽子はどうなっちゃったのかな?
結局ニュージェネの犯人は誰なのかわからないということですか?
I hate the fucking smiles on these people, Jesus.
そのダース・スパイダーのヘルメットは何か超能力と関係あるのかな?
西条さん、答えてくれませんか? これで終わりなんて言うなら電波ジャックですよ。
結局何がしたかったんです? ニュージェネに便乗した売名行為ですか? 不謹慎だと思わないんですか?
This is interesting. This is implying that these people think Nishijo is the one who set this all up. That, or he's being set up as a scapegoat.
ユーリ・ブライトマンさんとは最近話したかな? どんなこと話した?
Yuri Brightman?
地震とニュージェネについて何か関係あると思いますか?
その手に持っている美少女フィギュアは何らかの儀式的なアイテムと考えていいんですか?
Oh, geez, of course he's got it fucking holding it in his hand. Oh my god.
このような行動を取ったことにはアニメやゲームの影響はあったのかな?
God, even I'm starting to get sick on this. Okay.
西条さん、
西条さん、
西条君!
The lighting pointed at me had been incredibly hot. It felt as if my skin was being singed by the sun during the hottest part of the summer. The flood of people from the media made me feel lightheaded. My field of vision had been spinning around in circles. I've been cornered. I've been panicking. I've been unable to breathe. I had grasped my head. I can't see anything. I don't want to see anything. I can't hear anything. I don't want to hear anything. I can't feel anything. I don't want to feel anything. At the very same moment I'd screamed, like a computer that had short-circuited, my consciousness had severed. That was exactly what had happened. I'd lost consciousness. And then? How had I ended up here at this hospital? I couldn't remember. At the very least, I didn't think I'd come on my own. So maybe I've been brought to the hospital by an ambulance? Hazuki-san was writing something on the clipboard she was holding. She must have had a slip of paper clipped onto it. Was she writing about my condition? I checked what time it was via the simplistic watch wrapped around her wrist. It was a little after 6 a.m. I'd slept for a really long time. No, really? You want to have a delusion now of all times? For real? Oh, fuck, I didn't mean to. Regardless, why had I been brought here? If Hazuki-san was here, then that meant that this was my normal hospital. It wasn't like me being brought to a general hospital was particularly weird. But something still didn't feel right. Why was Hazuki-san coming to check on me? That question really bothered me. I mean, Hazuki-san was a psychiatric nurse. If Hazuki-san was coming to check on me, didn't that mean that the room I was in was also used by psychiatric patients? Maybe all the normal beds were full because of all the people who've been injured in yesterday's earthquake, and they just happened to put me in one of the beds from the psychiatric ward because of that. Honestly, that's a viable possibility. A lot of people were hurt. Or maybe they decide that me collapsing was due to psychological factors rather than physical ones. You know, I'm kind of curious about something. You know, now that I'm actually taking a look at the diagnostic results, this is making me think that the diagnostic test that I took at the very, early in the beginning, that's meant for the actual readers rather than, trying to put it through Takumi's perspective. Because I tried putting it through Takumi's perspective. Because a comment like this is like, if you're gonna turn out like my big bro, make sure you're someone other people can rely on when things get tough. That's not a message from Nanami to Takumi. This is a message from Nanami to the reader. Same thing with this, a word from Senna. Whatever you're aiming to do, push as hard as you possibly can to achieve it, but if you need a break, take... Huh. Why did it take me that long to just now get that? Or not get it, but understand it. Wow, now I really wish I answered that thing through my perspective. Huh. Huh. Well, I suppose they wouldn't be wrong, but... Then, my mood was gradually getting worse and worse.
昨日ご家族がお見えになっていたんですけど、西条さんの意識が戻らないので、日付が変わる頃にお帰りになりました。
You're being very ambiguous about what gender they are by saying they. Who is it?
今日は診察時間が始まる頃にお母様が来るそうですよ。
Okay, so we're gonna probably see Takumi's mom. I nodded in response, not having the energy to say anything back. Mom, I'm sorry for being such a disgrace. I'm an embarrassment to Japan. No. To the entire world. The entire thing had been televised, meaning it had already spread to the entire country. I was sure my shameful behavior had been uploaded to MewTube as well. I had no idea why I'd been made into the amazing Esper boy. And it didn't make any sense to broadcast my every move. And on the day of a huge earthquake, no less. When I was nothing but a boring otaku freak. It wasn't normal. Because of that, I couldn't help but think that everyone from back then was being mind-controlled by Shogun. But regardless of whether or not that was true, I'd still publicly humiliated myself. It wasn't something I'd escape after enduring a quick shitstorm online that'd be forgotten about in a week. Was this it for me? Would I no longer be able to live in peace? Suddenly, Nanami's face appeared in the back of my mind. I bit down on my lip and hugged my knees. Even if that was no longer attainable, as long as I could save Nanami, none of it would matter. Even if people from all over the world snickered at me and called me a pathetic loser for the rest of my life, it would make no difference to me. But I couldn't save her. I couldn't even do that much.
Nana.
Tears began to fall from my eyes.
どうしました？どこか痛みます？
Shaking my head over and over, I kept on crying. Nanami was dead. Nanami was dead and she was never coming back. It was all my fault. All my fault. All my fault. All my fault. Because of how worthless I was. Because of how much of a fucking loser I was. Nanami was dead. Back on that rooftop, I'd given up so easily on obtaining the D-sword. I had Seirutan's seductive voice in my ear, but that was just my pathetic self pretending to be someone else. I was the one who'd made the decision. I'd made myself look like a pitiful victim. I'd chosen to sacrifice Nanami so that I would survive. I hated myself. How fucking pathetic I was. If only I'd tried just a little bit harder. I told myself that I'd given up of my own volition, but now that it was all over, I regretted every single thing I'd done on that rooftop. I was absolutely disgusted with myself. She was gone. Nothing could save her now. And yet, even still, I couldn't help but think that if I could just go back to that rooftop and I just tried a little bit harder. But I knew that even if I actually could go back, I'd just give up all over again, finding some other excuse to get me out of it. That was just who I was. A completely useless, irredeemable piece of shit.
Nanami. ごめん。Nanami.
Hazuki-san rubbed my back in an attempt to comfort me. I was a useless sack of shit to the very end. I was even causing problems for nurses that had nothing to do with me. The tears refused to stop.
何か後悔していることがあるんですね。でもきっと妹さんも許してくれますよ。
Is she I'm guessing she's alive? Huh? How did she know that Nanami was my sister? Even that aside, the formulaic consolation she was giving me was the last thing I needed right now. I'm sorry, Hazuki-san, but no one else can understand how I feel. I hated myself. I was pathetic, did nothing but take advantage of everyone else, and only ever thought about myself. The world would be better off without me. Maybe I should just end it all.
昨日もしきりに西條さんのことを心配していましたよ。
Called it.
とても可愛らしい妹さんですね。
Thank God she's okay. What was she talking about?
ナナミは妹は死にました。
She'd been kidnapped by Shogun. Her hand had been cut off. Then she'd been imprisoned somewhere. And in the end, she died all alone and afraid. When I imagined it, It felt like my heart was being torn into dozens of tiny pieces.
そうなんですか。ごめんなさい。勘違いしてしまって。
All my life, I thought that Nanami was annoying. Although, we had been siblings for 16 years. He's so caught up in grief that he ignored the fact that she just said that she was here yesterday. Even though she'd called me a jerk more times than I could count, she was always worried about me. The reason why she'd always nagged me so much was because she'd been trying to help me break free from my toxic lifestyle. Whenever she brought me food from our parents' house, she didn't just give it to me and leave. She always tried to share it with me. Normally, if a girl her age had an otaku freak for a brother, they'd never associate with him. And while the things she'd said didn't make her the easiest person to be around, she'd still talk to me. And she would listen too. Whenever I'd been at school, she never avoided me. No, she would actually approach me. No matter what, Nanami had always treated me, a vile otaku freak virgin, like her brother. Like a human being. Her mere existence had helped me more than I ever knew. But realizing that did me no good now. It was too late.
でも、だとしたら、鬼ってどういう意味なのかしら。
Huh? Told you. He did not register that. First off, holy shit, thank God she's okay. Holy shit, thank God she's okay. Then whose hand was that? Fuck off, Shogun. Jesus. I looked up, unable to properly comprehend what I had just heard. As my eyes were blurry with tears, I couldn't see Hazuki-san's face properly. What did she just said?
眠ってる西条さんを、お兄、お兄と何度も呼んでいたから、その印象が強くて。
There was only one person who called me that.
それ、本当ですか?
Vaulting out of my bed, I pressed Hazuki-san for an answer.
はい、何がです?
ななみが、妹がななみがここに来てたんですか?
いえ、はっきりお名前を聞いたわけでは。
僕のこと鬼って呼んでたんですね。
ええ。
ななみは今どこに?
ですから、昨日はお帰りになりましたけど。
Yesterday.
西条さんのお母様と一緒に。
怪我とかしてませんでしたか?
Notice that. There it is again. Okay, once again, ignoring the character regression, look at this. The moment that he realizes she's okay, the first thing out of his mouth is like, is she hurt? Is she all right? There it is. Take away all of the negative aspects. Buried deep within there is the big brother and the protective instinct of a big brother.
はい。いえ、特には。
元気だったんですね。ななみは元気だったんですね。
はい。いえ、ななみさんかどうかはわかりませんけど、昨日いらしていた女の子は元気そうでしたよ。
Nanami was alive. From everything Hazuki-san had said, it had to be true. I sat down on the bed, utterly dazed. But how? Shogun had said that he wouldn't give Nanami back to me until I completed his quest. Had he just released her out of pity? Or had Nanami escaped on her own? But then, how would that explain the hand that had been sent to me? According to Hazuki-san, Nanami hadn't even been injured.
もしかしたら君の家に送ったあの手首は別人のものかもしれないよ。
Exactly. Whose hand was it? Whose eyes are those eyes? Whose hand is that hand? What he'd said, it hadn't been a lie. He'd played me. I'd been dancing right to his tune. Shogun had deceived me. No, that didn't matter right now.
そっか。
I see. So that was it. It was all coming together. Nanami had never been kidnapped at all. But back when I'd been at O-Front, trying desperately to grab the D-Sword, Nanami must have been relaxing back at home reading manga or going out to karaoke with her friends so she could show off her shitty singing voice or doing whatever else she'd like to do. I was crying, but I couldn't help but laugh.
西條さん？
将軍にまんまと騙された。
Jesus Christ, give the voice actor a fucking medal.
なんという壮大な釣りだよ。
Takumi, you okay, bud? She was alive. Nanami was alive. I could see that bratty ass face of hers again. I could hear that obnoxious, shrill voice of hers again. The mere thought was enough to bring me a deep sense of relief and an intense joy that rose from the bottom of my heart.
よかった。
I couldn't stop crying. But the tears weren't the tears of regret I'd been crying earlier.
よかった。
I was an utterly useless pile of shit, but I couldn't help it. The day before, I'd given up without being able to do anything. But even so, as long as Nanami was alive, I didn't wish for anything else. The whole world could mock me until the end of time for all I cared. I was overjoyed. Thank God, she was safe. Damn! Oh, thank God she's okay. Thank fucking God. Okay, I guess we're back with Bon. Yet another meeting had been called in the main conference room of the Shibuya Police Department, joining one of multiple others that had been held today. The exhausted, fed-up detectives all wondered how many more hours worth of unproductive meetings they would be forced to sit through. Matsunaga was about to start hearing the reports from each investigator when, suddenly, Bon hesitantly stood up and raised his hand.
ちょっといいですかね。
なんだね。
Inquisitive eyes and expressions landed on Bon, not just from Matsunaga, but from Suwa and the detective sitting next to him as well. Bon smiled his usual flippant smile, quickly bowed his head, then looked around the room.
先日インターネット上に投稿されたいわゆる集団ダイブの映像についてなんですが、実はちょっとした発見をしまして。
Oh, you did?
え？
The surprise on Suwa's face was evident. In all likelihood, he was surprised. After all, Bon had examined the video without saying a word to him. It was not because he had wanted to keep it a secret from him, however. No.
バン警部補、君は確か貼り付けの捜査担当だったはずだが、 なぜ集団ダイブについて調べている？
Because they're connected, dipshit. This was the reason. Bond had disregarded the orders he had been given by his boss, the head of the investigation team. If Bond had involved Sua, a promising new detective, his partner would have inevitably been harshly rebuked by their boss. Bond wanted to avoid this. Good for him.
まあとりあえず見てくださいって。
Honestly, that's good of Bond. Like, he's trying to be a good, like... Well, I say good, but he is kind of disregarding his command, but he doesn't want to drag other people with him, you know? He's like, nope, I made this mistake, you didn't, we don't want this guilt by association bullshit, so, I'll take responsibility. With a chuckle, Bond took out 2 enlarged photos from a file he held in his hand and attached them to the blackboard with magnets.
これはどっちも集団ダイブの現場となったコーネリアスタワー屋上の写真です。
The tower just disappeared.
右の写真は例のミュウツベ投稿映像から抜き出したもの。
Taken from the photo or from the video posted on YouTube?
左のは昨日の夜私がタワー屋上に行って撮ってきたものになります。
So, this is weird. The video where the group dive took place didn't have that tower in the background, but as soon as he went to the location where the group dive took place, the tower was there. What the hell's... Whoa.
何か違いに気づきませんか？
The entire conference room began to stir.
背景がね、違うんです。投稿映像のカメラは北東へ向かってる。5人が転落したのが北東だったから間違いない。
Yeah, the issue is, where the fuck is the tower?
で、映像では3分29秒から約15秒間、カメラが左右へ大きく触れるんですが、その時に東に向いた時の映像がこの右側の写真なわけです。
Oh, okay. It was one of those, okay, I see. So people that are watching the video, it's a blink and you miss it sort of thing. Like if you're not paying attention to the finer details, you wouldn't really notice that, oh wait, there's just an entire whole ass building missing in the background.
コーネリアスタワーの東、つまり六本木方面ですね。
You're too distracted by the, oh, I don't know, the people jumping off a fucking roof?
東京タワーが夜景の中にしっかり映ってる。赤いから目立ちますね。でもね、もう一つよく目立つものが映ってないんですよ。
Bond's eyes narrowed as he combed his beard with his fingers, and then a wry smile appeared on his lips.
六本木ビルズですよ。
It was true. The lights of Roppongi Bills could not be seen in the photo he had taken from the uploaded video. But in the photo Bond had taken the day prior, the lights of Roppongi Bill's many windows were very clearly visible along with Tokyo Tower.
で、たまたま見つけたんですが、コーネリアスタワーのホテルロビーにタワー完成当時のパネルが展示してありましてね。そのパネルの一つがこれ。
Bond retrieved a new photo from the file and pinned it next to the previous two. It was also a picture of the Roppongi area taken from the rooftop of the tower, but it was not a picture taken at night. It was one taken at day.
六本木ビルズが映ってますよね。建設中ですが。
The commotion in the conference room grew even louder. Matsunaga, meanwhile, remained silent as he stared at the photo with a stern expression.
コーネリアスタワーの完成は2001年。六本木ビルズの完成は 2003年
Different times?
タワー完成当時の写真では当然ながら六本木ビルズは建設中でまだ高さもほとんどない。だが集団ダイブが起きたのは今年2008年だ。
Holy shit, there's a huge discrepancy here.
映ってなきゃおかしいですよね。六本木ビルズ。ちなみに投稿映像に細工された形跡はなかった。
So that's potentially implying that this footage was recorded at in a different year. Which means, is there a potential where other people fell off the building? Or were pushed off the building at a different time?
つまり何が言いたいんだ。
Having seemingly lost patience with the detective, Matsunaga urged him onward discontentedly.
非常に言いにくいんですが。
Alright, let's hear your theory, Bon.
まさか先輩、この映像が撮られたのは2003年以前、つまり5年以上前って言いたいんですか？
Yeah! There's a severe discrepancy here. Dang it, Suwa. Bon's shoulders slumped dejectedly. The young detective's keen insight was brilliant. Suwa had said exactly what Bon had intended to say. However, having said it aloud in such a straightforward manner only made the claim appear all the more dubious. Bon's careful planning on how to articulate his points had been all for nothing.
バカバカしい。小説の読みすぎではないがね。
Then how do you explain the fucking lack of tower?
映像に映っている被害者5人の顔は一致しているんだ。あれが5年前のもののはずがない。そんなつまらないことを調べている暇があったら、聞き込みの一つでもしたらどうだ、警部補。
How about you? You're ignoring the... Oh my god.
今のは聞かなかったことにする。それと、後で話があるから会議が終わったら残りたまえ。
After letting out a short sigh, Bon gave up and sat back down. Well, it's not like I expected him to believe me. Bitter and unwilling to accept defeat, Bon muttered that inside his head before returning to listlessly fanning his face with his handheld fan. And yet, despite all the work he had done, if one were to ask what the absence of Roppongi bills in the video signified, Bon would be unable to answer. The answer is that there's a time discrepancy. Something is not right. After I'd found out that Nanami was alive, the doctor came to me and asked me a few simple questions. They wanted to make sure whether or not I was well enough to leave. I answered the questions to the best of my ability, then opted to leave the hospital before my mom came back. After that disgraceful behavior I'd showed off in front of the entire country, how was I supposed to face my family now? And if Nanami were to come back, I knew that I'd be so happy I'd immediately burst into tears all over again. There we go. And then since she wouldn't know why I was crying, Nami would then take it seriously and start yelling at me to not worry about her, probably while calling me an idiot too. When I thought about that, I nearly fainted from the sheer embarrassment, and so instead of letting that happen, I decided to employ a strategic retreat. Oh my god. A nurse brought in the most disgusting breakfast of all time, and after chipping away at it slightly, I snuck out of the hospital room. I made my way down to the first floor and then into the lobby. The clinic hadn't opened yet, so the lobby that was usually packed with old people was completely deserted. I confidently walked toward the front entrance. Lucky for me, the automatic door opened, giving me free rein to exit the building. The hospital staff might have gotten angry with me for leaving without asking them first, but I had to stay away from the hospital until everything calmed down. As for the medical fees, I left my mom a note telling her to go ahead and pay for it, so it should be fine. Despite the fact that I had stayed overnight at the hospital, I wasn't exhibiting any actual symptoms, and my mental state was doing much better after I learned Nanami was alive. Making sure to keep an eye out for any ambushes by Shogun or Yua, I quickly made my way back to my base. I had made it back. My mental state had done a complete 180 since I'd last been at my base. Of course, I was feeling a lot better now. If only I could have let my past self know that. You let yourself get baited far too often, mate. I rate 8 out of 8, little 9. There's no reason for you to get so riled up, dude. Nanami's fine, lol. Or something along those lines. Thinking back on it, yesterday really had been a living hell. Everything had just gone to shit. I'd gotten a weird phone call in the morning, then there'd been an earthquake, then the data on my hard drive had disappeared, then I'd had to witness Ayase try to off herself right in front of me, then I'd gotten an email from Shogun, then he sent me a severed hand. A severed goddamn hand! My mood plummeted in an instant. With a gulp, I turned my attention to the fridge. Oh god, is it still in there? That's where the hand is. Before I'd left yesterday, I decided in my maniacal state to just put the hand in the fridge for the time being. If I'd left it out somewhere, it could have started rotting. The smell of blood was also way too strong for me. There are all sorts of sci-fi anime and movies where, as long as they remained frozen, people could stay in a state of suspended animation for hundreds of years. Well, I mean, you prefaced that by saying sci-fi, and I was about to say, yeah, that's some sci-fi hooey. So that was pretty much what I was going for. I thought that, if I could keep Nanami's arm fresh, she might have been able to get it surgically reconnected once she was back home safe. But if that wasn't Nanami's hand, then who the hell did it belong to? And how would that explain the cell phone and the bangle? If I wasn't missing something, then it had to belong to Nanami. When I'd called her, it rung on the cell phone held in the hand. Or maybe it had all been just a part of Shogun's trap. Was it even possible to make such a perfect replica of Nanami's arm?
もう一度確かめてみるべきかも。
Watch it be empty. In truth, I really didn't want to. The entire hand thing grossed me out. Just thinking about it made me want to puke, even if it did belong to Nanami. But that didn't mean I could just keep it in my fridge forever. Not even my supply of cola stayed that cold in it. I considered asking the police to come take it, but then I realized that they just suspect me of being the new-gen culprit. Even more than they already did, that is. It would practically be suicidal to dial 110 and go, "Hello, yes, please come and take this person's severed hand off my hands. Thank you." I mean, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. What should I do? Should I just throw it away? But supposing it was Nanami's arm, it really didn't sound like a good idea to throw it away. Hell, were you even allowed to throw away human hands like that? Did they constitute as burnable or non-burnable trash? I tore at my hair. There was no point continuing to torture myself over it. I just go ahead and check one more time that the bangle was on her wrist and that she was holding her cell phone. Was it Nanami's? Or was it someone else's? That was the question I hoped to answer. I stood in front of the refrigerator and gripped the handle. I closed my eyes, and I took 1, then 2, then 3 deep breaths. Unsurprisingly, the temptation to just call Rimi and ask her to do it for me crept into my mind. But I quickly shook it away. No matter how good of an ally Remy was to me, there was no way she wouldn't freak out upon finding someone's hand in my fridge. And then if I managed to fuck up the explanation, she'd fall out of love with me and then turn me into the police. That she'd fall out of love. Ah, that was a delusion right there. Well, I mean, maybe. I don't know. I was gonna have to do this on my own somehow.
くそ
I clenched my teeth, took 2 more deep breaths, and then I yanked on the handle with all my might.
あれ
It's not in here. It was empty. Entirely empty. I thought for sure that I'd put the hand in there yesterday. It had been wrapped in aluminum foil. It should have been on the top shelf. And yet, there was no sign of it. All that was there was a few bottles of cola and a bunch of rotten clementines. Nothing else. Oh, that's what those
消え
are.
たなんで
Just like that. It was completely gone. I crouched down and looked farther into the refrigerator. But of course, it still wasn't there. There wasn't much in there to begin with, so it was already practically empty. There was no way I could have missed it.
昨日ここに入れたよな
Or maybe I just assumed that, and in reality I just left it somewhere. I closed the fridge door, then looked around my trash-filled room.
段ボールもない
The large cardboard box with the hand inside of it. What had I done with it? I felt like I tossed it into the corner of my room or something, but... Either way, my memory of last night was very unclear. More things had happened yesterday than my poor brain could handle, and everything was made all the more brutal due to the utter chaos of it all. Calm down. Just calm down. Now, get your thoughts together. Think of why it might have disappeared. Oh, he immediately just kind of wrote it down for himself here. I booted up the word processor on my PC and wrote down all the possibilities I could think of. My mistake, I put it somewhere else in my room. I myself took it outside yesterday and threw it away somewhere. Shogun took it back. The police searched my house and confiscated it. The mass media broke in and stole it. The hand never existed in the first place. That's his last option. My base had been unlocked ever since yesterday, so if someone really wanted to, they could have come right in and taken it without much trouble. That would also be consistent with how Shogun had been able to put that hand in my room in the first place. Or maybe it was number 2. My memory of when I'd left my base to go to O-Front was unclear. The feeling that I had to save Nanami, seeing the severed hand, how terrified I was of Shogun, all of those emotions swirled around me, invading each and every corner of my mind. I couldn't calm down at all. Maybe I just left my base and tossed the hand in a dumpster somewhere without knowing it? Or maybe the whole hand thing in general had just been just a delusion, and it didn't actually exist at all. But when I went to check my email, I found that the one I'd gotten from Shogun yesterday did in fact exist, and in that email, he clearly stated that the hand was a present. Not to mention that Shogun himself had talked about it yesterday. I just couldn't believe that it had been just a delusion. Okay. Then what about the possibility that the police or the media took it? Those people looked at otaku freaks like we were no better than shit smeared on the bottom of their shoes, so it wouldn't surprise me. After everything that had happened yesterday, I was afraid to look at the internet. And yet, in the end, I couldn't help myself, so I clicked open my browser. First, I checked the news section on Taboo, as well as the news sites I would typically go to. And sure enough, there were articles upon articles about the uproar yesterday at Scramble Crossing. Is the radio wave hijacking Esper just a boy who cried wolf? The ESP show, held by the New Generation boy, ended in the worst possible way. In response to the seismic intensity 5 earthquake that struck at noon on October 27th, several news stations, including MHK, BTS, and TV Sunset, broadcasted breaking news reports. Today, TV and Fujisun TV, meanwhile, began broadcasting simultaneous coverage of both the earthquake and the Esper show starting at 9 p.m. Following this, the two stations were immediately flooded with call after call protesting this decision. When faced with the disappointing end of the show, the nearly 5,000 fans that had crowded in front of Shibuya Station all began to boo loudly for over an hour, with some fans even fighting amongst themselves. The situation resulted in 13 separate arrests. The commotion began with a prank email sent by a boy, hereby referred to as N, living in Shibuya Ward. At first, news stations were skeptical to the email, which claimed that the boy was a clairvoyant esper who could see the culprit behind the New Generation madness, the popular name for a series of brutal incidents taking place in Shibuya. However, when American psychic detective Yuri Brightman, age 43, informed TV Today and Fujisun TV that he would be willing to become the boy's legal guardian, both stations immediately took him at his word. Or so the story goes. Yuri Brightman. The ratings for both TV Today and Fujisun TV were extraordinary, with the highest simultaneous viewership exceeding 40%. These are astonishing figures, surpassing even that of Kohaku ringing in the new year. Although, these figures may only be for the simultaneous broadcast of the earthquake report, the broadcast was obviously a huge success in terms of viewership. However, the boy starring in the show, N, did not turn out to be an esper. He repeatedly riled up the audience by motioning like he was going to jump off the building, but his performance did not extend beyond that. Undeterred, the media companies dared to go up on the rooftop to report on the situation and attempt to get a comment about the New Gen incidents. But they were unsuccessful. The boy was found collapsed on the rooftop holding a moe anime figure and a costume from a popular Hollywood film. According to otaku culture expert Professor Hashiba Yoshiro of Meisei University, there has been a rapid increase in the number of young people who dream of becoming heroes, but in the pursuit of this dream act with no regard to the world around them. Under the influence of anime, video games, and other similarly damaging media, they have lost the ability to distinguish between fantasy and reality. This is likely what is causing them to act in such a way. They require psychological care. I did notice that. I hadn't sent any emails to the media. I'd never even seen Yuri Brightman's show, let alone met him. So what the hell? Was this all just part of Shogun's plan like I'd originally thought? What was his ultimate goal here? He'd said something about it being a quest or something. Okay, then what was the point of having the mass media televise me trying to get my hands on a sword? I didn't get it. What was Shogun trying to accomplish? He'd even released Nanami alive. I followed the links to various articles, but even after reading through all of them, not a single one of them mentioned Shogun. There'd been practically no gap at all between when I'd tackled Shogun and when the media had come bursting onto the rooftop. Even if Shogun had managed to escape during that window, the media would have seen him. And not only that, but Shogun was supposed to be stuck in a wheelchair. He was supposed to be paralyzed. So there was absolutely no way he would have been able to escape the rooftop in such a limited time frame. I went on to check @channel. And to no one's surprise, an enormous shitstorm was going on. My real name was being plastered everywhere. Oh no. The uniform that Nishijo dumbass was rocking is from Sumai, isn't it? Are there any Sumai students in this red right now? That guy's a terminal fucktard. Do us all a favor and off yourself, you piece of human trash. Nishijo, you need to chill the fuck out. Fuck's sake. It'll be your fault if otaku start getting beat up again. They found him carrying a figure? LOL. It was a goddamn Sarah Bloodtune figure. What the fuck? And just like that, otaku freaks around the world all just shed a tear. This Nishijo fucker should have just stayed inside like the shut-in he is. TVS not for him. TV's not for him. I'm stupid. Sarah would be like, Nishijo, you big dum-dum. Time for me to kick your fat butt with my awakened form rocket body blow attack. What the fuck kind of name? My god.
うつだ
Old. Some rando was a classmate of his last year already came out and doxed the guy. Oh. Everyone was just saying whatever the hell they wanted to. They weren't even considering how I felt as they talked all this shit about me. Oh man, dude. Having @channel as your enemy was a scary thing. Okay, now we're getting in from mental health crisis to the terrors of the internet and people not giving a shit about, you know, yeah. Jesus Christ. And it was all Shogun's fault. I was in this mess. I was wondering if anybody had leaked any sensitive information onto @channel. The stuff that couldn't be aired on TV, but I couldn't find anything that fit that criteria. I hadn't been alone on that rooftop. There had been one more person, and yet not a shred of information had come out about them. It was almost like the being known as Shogun had never been there in the first place. Maybe the Shogun that appeared on the rooftop was just an illusion. Maybe even if I know for a fact that he exists, there's a possibility that the Shogun I saw at O-Front was just a delusion I created.
僕はやっぱり病気なのかも
A little bit. There were so many things happening that shouldn't have been possible in real life. It was more like a video game at this point. Like there were two worlds, one where Nanami was alive and one where she was dead. And the two options were running parallel to one another, meaning I got to choose between them, just like a choice you'd find in an eroge. The future was divided into countless different branches, and what made me different from normal people was that I could simulate what story events might occur using my delusions, and I was in the middle of simulating the route that would lead to the bad ending. No, I'm pretty sure we got a bad ending, actually. You know, being pushed, and then you die. So, I think we've already seen that. Like one where Nanami died, or one where Ayase jumped to her death, or one where I fell off Ofra and died. Yeah, we saw that one. In other words, for some reason, all these things that you'd normally find in the bad ending route could be coming after me. Almost like they were hunting me down due to a trap I myself had set. Maybe I just had the desire to leave behind my boring, uneventful life and go to a more exciting world, like one from a game. And because of that, I've been unconsciously showing myself what that would look like. That couldn't be it. I didn't have any desires even remotely like that. Or at the very least, I would never want to make myself go through anything that'd make me feel sad or scared, simulation or not.
っていうかどれだけ想像力豊かなんだよ
Yeah. What I had been considering was nothing more than some childish bullshit delusion I'd come up with without thinking. I sighed, leaned back in my chair, and looked up at the ceiling with a blank stare on my face. Reality isn't set in stone. Anything and everything just felt fake. The world I was living in was completely hollow. Woman in her 20s found dead in Shibuya River of Shibuya Ward on October 28th. The woman died of asphyxiation after consuming the flesh of her own right hand and choking on a bone that lodged itself in her throat.
今日午後8時ごろ、渋谷区の渋谷川で女性の変死体が発見されました。
Her own right hand? The same hand that was holding... Holy shit!